Hello, hello. Welcome to the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horwitz. You can find me on Twitter, NJ287, also on LinkedIn, where I post more content. The website where you can find everything is dsmsports.net, and this podcast is available on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. We have a best of episode for you guys today. So I try to do these once a quarter. Then I looked up, I realized we had never did one in Q3 of 2025 this year, and here we are up on the precipice of Thanksgiving, depending on when you're listening to this. And so, what better time to do it during a holiday week when maybe some of you will be traveling either to or from your Thanksgiving destination. We have the holidays coming up, even more holidays in December, of course. So a good time to revisit some conversations from the past 12 plus, nearly 13 years of this podcast, and we have a tremendous few today that you're going to hear from. So the way these best of episodes work, if you're new to this, you're going to hear about 15 minutes or so from each episode, and you can always go back and listen to the full thing. But to give you a nice flavor, you get to hear some good substance from these conversations, and just a great way to sample a few conversations. So there's a quick rundown who you're going to hear from, then we'll get right into it. You're going to hear from Kennon Pearson, who was with Duke Athletics when I spoke with him. Now he's with the Columbus Crew, helping with their creative. Then you're going to hear from Brendan Kaminsky, who is with bknown, his own agency, and has really done a ton throughout his career, helping with ESPN Social, especially working with a lot of the ESPN talent over the years, Stephen A. among others. Then you're going to hear from Kayci Evans. She's with Evil Geniuses, the great esports group, and she has a lot of good insights on esports as well as from her time with Major League Baseball. After Kayci will be Andrew Stallings of the Athelo group. Andrew is such a big player in the athlete representation space, especially with some of these more emerging sports, emerging athletes, and has such good insights from that space. After Andrew will be Kyle Benzion. Kyle has such a decorated career, still a young man, but is full of insight, full of talent. So you're going to enjoy hearing from him. And then the last one will be Chris Wescott, who I've really enjoyed being able to follow his career over the years and be able to have some good conversations with him. He comes from the hockey world, but is now with Learfield, and so he has some good insights to offer there. So let's get right into it. So first up, it is Kennon Pearson, who, in addition to being a stellar sports creative guy, is also a metal rock fan that we like to connect with. But in this part, so again, when I spoke with Kennon, he was with Duke Athletics. He's now with the Columbus Crew, the MLS team. And this part of my conversation, you hear about what it's like to develop a consistent brand, how they work with that with Duke, having a consistent aesthetic across the Duke Athletics teams, while also still allowing teams to have creative freedom. Whether it's Duke, cross country or football or softball or whatever it might be. And also about finding operational efficiencies when you're producing a ton of content, a ton of volume, as they did at Duke. Really a good insight there into being efficient and how you think about what ROI means for creative, making sure everything has a purpose. And he's taking these lessons into the Columbus Crew today. So here he is, listen up to some of my conversation with Kennon Pearson.
I'll start with colors because that's one of the most interesting topics that I have when I converse with other creatives, because I'm in group chats and I'm direct talking with people who work with other teams in colleges and pro sports and all around. And I think one of the most challenging things that everyone runs into a lot of times is colors. And you may think that's kind of weird, but think about it this way. So I don't count black and white as team colors, like unless you're like the Nets and those are your colors.
Yeah.
Like those are colors that basically any team can use because they're just universal. So when you're stuck with basically a primary color and no secondary color, you really have to figure out, how do I balance like that contrast? Because sometimes, like in our blue, black on top of it, like if you have black text, it doesn't read very well. So you're almost like you have to stick with white on black. But if you're on white, you can do blue or black on it. Whereas there are some schools that may have, like I would say the Florida Gators is a good example. So like they have blue and orange plus white. And I'm sure they can use black too in some things. So like that's one of my favorite things to like consider is like, well, do we want this to be a very blue piece or a very white piece? So that's usually our interpretation. Like in years past, they've done a lot of white pieces because it complements the white screen studio shots they do. And when my coworkers and I started doing what we do currently, we've been going very blue heavy recently. And even then, like we've changed it a little bit. Well, at least I've changed it a little bit on some of the projects I've worked on, since a lot of our spring sports are doing our outdoors and doing postseason in outdoor looks. I've actually been doing a lot more full color kind of vintage summer vibes on stuff, like especially for our women's golf team. I did it for men's golf, tennis, softball, just a bunch of like utilizing the full color from a photo and actually the composition of the photo, that because we have an amazing team of photographers and media people, and even our social media people are doing photos, so like taking those and interpreting it. So really it to kind of string it back, like a lot of our that like process in our head, even though we have our baseline look, a lot of times it still is creative freedom. It's like, what do I want to do with this, or what's the focal point? Like with records or number of wins, usually we like to highlight the number in big, and then it's like, all right, do we have cutouts for this? Do we want them to be smaller? Do we want them to cover it up? Do we want them to be inside of it? There's a lot of things. So usually when we're creating, the two things we start with is there a focal point, text or person? And then how do we want to color it? Do we want it to be blue? Do we want it to be full color? Stuff like that.
This is I'm grinning here because this is awesome. Like, this is exactly what I want to be able to go on with, because there's all these minute details that take that thought. And so when you're looking at, okay, like you mentioned, we want to make sure, like, for example, the focus is on the number, because that's really what this is all about. We're celebrating whatever, Coach K breaking another record. Are you thinking about the goal of the piece? Or are you also thinking about, like, where's this piece going? What's performed well? What's performed well in the past? What's going to be most thumb stopping? Like, what's that? What are those outcomes that you're trying to shoot for? Or is it ultimately, let's create the best, objectively best creative piece that meets the specs or the guidelines that we have in place?
Yeah. So I guess, at least for myself personally, I think back to kind of a rule of thumb that I learned in my last job, because we did a lot of the print on demand products we did were like t-shirts, or we did designs on tumblers, which those are already small products. And our rule of thumb was, how far away and how well can you read it from far away? So, you don't want to have like a paragraph on a t-shirt. One, it looks ugly. Two, a lot of people who have graphic t-shirts, they want a quick statement that you can read from far away. So I try to think of my designs the same way, because if you're looking at your phone, even if you've got like the max size of that year's iPhone or phone that you have, it's still going to be smaller than a desktop. Like, I have some pretty big monitors and I have an iMac. So I mean, like, when I'm designing these things, I'm seeing it in a higher fidelity, but I always like kind of zoom out when I look at it to see how am I going to stop the scroll and then interpret it as best as possible, as quickly as possible. And usually that requires a big number, big text, or something in it that kind of stands out. Because if you have a bunch of tiny text, some people aren't going to read it. Some people, it's not even going to register while they're scrolling by. So my philosophy is always like, whatever that focal point is, it needs to be pronounced enough to where someone's like, they don't get banner blindness, and they're like, they just keep scrolling. They see a number, they see a word, they see a person, and they're like, oh, who is this? What is this? And they stop. And even if they stop long enough to just kind of see what it is and keep going, you still stopped them.
Yeah, I guess you should have something that catches their focus, and you don't want to have too many things like battling for that focus, because one, I guess people can only focus on one thing at a time, but also just the sheer fact that you maybe only have 1 second for that impression, or 1.5 seconds, who knows how long it may be. And you want to get that across, I guess. And you guys may have some stuff that's on a tiny Instagram feed, and you may have some stuff that goes up on the video board in Cameron Indoor. And so I can imagine trying to think about those different mediums. How fungible is it, or how flexible is it when you are producing, like, whatever, let's call it, a landmark piece of content, or whatever terminology you want to use, that this is something that we're going to celebrate across platforms? How much do you really need to differentiate, whether it's the entire composition itself or the entire piece, or are there little elements that you can tweak so that this can work on Facebook, this can work on the video board, this can work on Instagram?
Right. So I guess one thing we've been doing a lot of, and I think this is pretty common with a lot of people. I know that Square technically works on all platforms, but when you have stuff like when you're on Instagram, like when you're not when you're in your feed, a 4x5 you can look at, and it takes up more space, more screen space. And same thing with Twitter. When they introduced and got rid of the vertical crop last year, that became huge because a lot of people on Twitter were still thinking very traditional, like Facebook and all that kind of stuff, where you had a 16:9 piece and you had a wider landscape to fit more information, but it's smaller on a phone. So a lot of times when we're doing big things like records, like achievements, typically we'll always do it in a 4x5 format because it is more mobile optimized. And if something is needed and that can be used on Facebook too, and Twitter, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. If there's anything that needs to be a specific size outside of that, like if it does need to be a 16:9 landscape portrait or landscape project where you have it on like a video board or you have it on in an email, sure, we'll specify that and try to find a way to reinterpret it. But a lot of times we're sticking to that 4x5 ratio because it allows us to use it across multiple platforms, and really it forces you to make sure that you're not too cluttered in what you're putting in there because you have a limited amount of space, which kind of is paradoxical because you're picking that size because it takes up screen space, but if you put too much in it, it becomes hard to interpret what it is.
Yeah. No, I am definitely guilty of I always try to keep things clean, but then they're still busy as hell, and I won't make fun of myself, but I will. So like when you guys have a record breaking graphic that you need to produce or have ready, or let's say tomorrow there's a big milestone that happens with the Duke baseball team or whatever, like do you guys have, okay, here are the 3, 4, 5 like sort of templated designs that we have for this kind of scenario? Or is it really like you're not necessarily starting from scratch every time, but you're just combining different ingredients? Or like how do you go about being able to take it, not leverage, but produce on such a scale for similar-ish type occasions across the board, and frankly across different sports too, which may have their own little mini sub brands or sub looks and feels?
So I guess that's the interesting thing, is because we really don't template some of that stuff. There are certain things where if there's like weekly awards, like for both lacrosse teams, we have ACC Defensive Player of the Week and Offensive Player of the Week. Like those we can template because it's all the information is the same, and then you're just changing out the person and their title. But then, for example, I've been doing a lot of softball stuff this week, so like we had 40 regular season wins, so we're doing something for that. And then ranking our highest ranking coming up soon, and then all ACCs are coming out soon. And there are probably elements that I'm borrowing from other things I've done, but really honestly, a lot of what we're doing for records, we're just creating on the fly, unless we know there's going to be a bunch of that exact same one for that team, like a player of the week kind of thing, or player of the month. It's really just artistic interpretation. We're making something unique for every single one. And that can sound like a lot. It is if you think about it, but we've gotten so used to doing it that it's just kind of like we want those pieces to stand out, because I think that no matter what, they'll still look and feel like a Duke piece, and they'll always try to keep it to looking like it is part of that team. But we want to make it special, especially big milestones. Like, if a coach wins their 200th, 300th career win at Duke, that's a pretty big deal. So finding good photos for cutout, good composition, good layout, all that stuff is great. But you don't want it to look exactly like the last landmark that another team did, if that makes sense.
No, totally. You mentioned like the example of like softball, getting 40 wins, and that's awesome. And softball, I'm a big softball fan as well. But tell me, like, where does that come from? Meaning, like, is that the SID for softball says, hey, we have this milestone coming up, let's do something for this, or like what? And you say, okay, yes, we can do this, or maybe no, we don't have the bandwidth or the time or capacity. Like, what goes into deciding what gets that custom creative treatment, and how you guys go about making sure you don't get overbooked, so to speak?
Well, I do think that is in terms of making sure that we don't get overbooked. Everyone always communicates with us first, and almost every single time it's never do this, it's can you do this, because they understand, especially like right during crossover seasons or during postseason, like everything in postseason is reactive. You're done with your templated stuff. Like they already have what they need for scores and for final scores of the game and game start, that kind of stuff for every team. So what you're doing at this time of year is doing those things like all ACCs, what your bracket is as you're going through NCAAs and who wins something big or hits a milestone. But it is our team members coming to us directly and saying, can you do this? And this is what we need. So if they know a big win is coming up, like it's someone's 300th win or someone's 200th career point, they'll see the trend where they're like, it'll happen by about this game, so we get it ready. So it is ready. Luckily, most of the time we have a little bit of leeway. Sometimes things come out, like rankings usually come out the night before, like across a lot of teams. So sometimes that is assigned to us the night before, and usually it's like the first thing you'll do when you come in the next day. So it really, really depends, but a lot of times we can kind of predict milestones because there's something that's a consistent buildup, like a number of wins, like a number of, when you have someone who's always scoring and they're going to hit this point at some point in the season, you might as well just get it ready, because at some point they'll hit that number of goals or whatever, unless something wrong happens, they drop out of school or something random, something completely unforeseen.
Right.
But most of the time you can predict these things, which is really cool.
I'm thinking about like newspaper writers that might have like a retirement story ready years in advance because they know it's coming at some point, and have like the skeleton of a story, or on a more morose side, like the obituaries that are pre-written and stuff as well. When you can predict something's coming,
right?
When it comes to like prove something for softball, for lacrosse, for golf, for basketball, how much is it the Duke brand and how much is it the Duke softball brand? Like, do you have to account for nuances, or maybe the coach wants something certain or wants something different, or they have a rebrand? So like, are there noticeable differences between the Duke sports and the overarching Duke athletics brand, or is it really just one look across the board?
I would say up to this point, everything has been kind of interpreted for its own. Well, at least in the time that I've been doing it, each team has its own identity. It still looks like Duke, and that's something we always want to make sure happens. But in general, everything kind of has its own look. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that we do have a dedicated team of designers and creatives that can create these looks across multiple sports, versus having like a single person who may not be a part of the organization, or even just having a single person trying to do everything. That would probably limit a little bit. But we have enough creative between not just the designers, but also our social media people. They all have some level of graphic design experience too. So sometimes there's stuff that's really simple that may just be like literally slapping text on a photo, and something like that, they have the skills that they can do, because if we're in the middle of a lot of other projects, they can take things on pretty easily as well. Even if they want to take a shot at it. I think that's something that's really cool with our team, is everyone may have something specifically they do, but if you want to try something different, if you want to experiment with that, everyone has that flexibility. I know like several people do photo that might not normally do it, or like one of the other graphic designers, I don't have to do any social stuff, but he decided he wanted to try some social stuff, and now he's running socials for track and field, and also he's helping out with softball and some other stuff. So it's like, it's kind of, everyone has that kind of like core thing that they do, and everyone's trying to maintain each individual look, but we all help each other out, so that way you can establish this like broad Duke look that is specialized per team, if that makes sense. Because I've seen it with some other college athletics, because college athletics are definitely unique in that regardless of who's your biggest team or teams, everyone's still, I know a lot of colleges that have kind of looks that are the same across both athletics and their other teams. There's some people who, like us, where athletics is one look, teams are another look. It's all different. It really comes down to what that team wants, what that school wants. And I don't think there's a right or wrong with that either. I've seen some really good examples of schools who it's a completely consistent look across all the teams, and some who are like us, I think we do a pretty good job of keeping it all different.
Just fantastic stuff with Kennon Pearson. I still enjoy following his work with the Columbus Crew today. That is episode 220. I encourage you to go listen to that full interview. You will definitely enjoy it and learn a lot more. But next up on the Best of Digital and Social Media Sports podcast, you will hear some of my chat with Brendan Kaminsky. Brendan is such a smart guy. He is oftentimes you'll see him speaking on panels these days. He does a ton to help with just overall social media marketing and event activation and brand and just has a ton of great skills and insights. But as he came up, as I mentioned earlier, he came up in the ESPN ranks, helping a lot with their personalities and their talent, working with helping develop some of those the big name talents and how they can use social. So that's what we're going to hone in on this part of our conversation with them. We talk about what it's like to develop a social media presence for an individual, for a personality, for a talent. How do you separate that sort of TV, that exaggerated personality you might see on TV versus the human side that you want to showcase on social a bit, making sure you have an authentic nature to you, not to overuse that term. And we also talk about building a brand that can live on its own, separate from an ESPN umbrella or Fox Sports or whatever is that corporate umbrella that you're under. And then lastly, touching a little bit on polarization. Social media a lot. I asked him straight up about the sort of the elements of polarization, how that social media kind of favors that almost those hot take culture, so to speak. So it's really interesting to get Brendan's thoughts on that as well. So here he is. Listen up to some of my conversation with Brendan Kaminsky of bknown.
As time went on, like I said, there was more creative freedom and there was more that ESPN didn't, like ESPN would not necessarily hire people specifically for social media back in the day, right? It would be like someone who's interested in being on TV or producer, and then they would get rotated into a social media team. So there just became more people that like really are from this era of like producing content 24/7 for social and understanding what that fan wants. But I'd say that, for anyone that's doing an account, like it has to be like what's going to resonate with fans. And, we would always be doing the service to engage with the fans and always be doing the service to grow the accounts. And I mean, analytics just became a beast, and it continues to be a beast for me. And, some of us became really addicted. And anyone, like I'm to this day, like I'm addicted to analytics, and we like use that to drive a lot of our strategy.
There's our headline: Brendan Kaminsky, I'm addicted to analytics. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's fine.
I want to touch briefly on like when did you start to really, or when did ESPN overall, I guess, start to think strategically about the social media accounts of its talent? We'll get into this because I know you and I worked together just through my job on how we maximize and leverage the accounts of the talent who have enormous reach, who have enormous engagement. So when did that sort of light bulb go off for ESPN, or when did your role start to also think about, hey, you're doing a kick-ass job on these quote unquote brand platforms, but how can we get XYZ individual who has a great personality, how can we get their platforms to be more effective, and how can it help all parties?
Yeah. So that happened sometime in 2018, because I moved to New York October of 2018, I believe it was. And, it was something where, ESPN just realized we have all these internal influencers. Let's work with them. Like we've never formalized a program as like, hey, here's ways that we can work better with the social team, and we'll make content for you and explain best practices. Right. And like, as best practices change every minute, every second. So it's just like a constant communication thing with folks. And I was the one leading it, and it was a blast, man. I mean, I really enjoyed that role, and got to just sit with a bunch of personalities and explain. And some people are better than others, but some just with Instagram and now TikTok, like it's not easy to produce for anybody, right? And imagine if you're someone on TV who's there, like I don't know, on TV 5 hours a day, and has a really busy schedule. Like, you don't know how to produce an Instagram story, or you don't know the best way to put up an Instagram reel or a TikTok, or the optimal Twitter video size, right? Like these are things in the weeds, but as they're all very important. So I just built a program and had an amazing team, and worked with people and worked really closely with the social team to just figure out, like, how can we all win together, right? Like, we're all part of the same family and team, and let's just figure out ways to produce content on site and to make ESPN content better. And these are the people that represent the worldwide leader, and how do we make them featured in our social media? So that's really what it was. And I think it's just a way of the world now is talent and individuals are just have the most power online, right? So me and you, like, people have relationships with us and connections with us. You work at Greenfly, I have bknown. I would love to think that people have a relationship with bknown. They have a relationship with me, though, and the people that are on our staff. And like, so the more that we use our megaphones, so however big our megaphones are, which aren't that big, compared to the general population and, true influencers. But it's important for us to like use our social platforms to leverage, because everyone has, some sort of influence to their networks. And so I think that was just in line with ESPN, and it was really smart, and I was really happy to be part of it.
And when you look at whether ESPN or clients now or both, like, are there certain lines that talent, or that you almost even recommend talent draw, where, hey, Twitter is a place that I'm going to be a little bit more of the person that people know, the talent, the head that they see on TV or on whatever, on broadcast, versus Facebook's for my family and my close friends, or Instagram is for this. Like, do you have to almost delineate, like, this is where I am blank the talking head, and this is where I am the normal guy that lives down the street and mows his lawn?
Yeah, so I think it's more on how the content is optimized, and timing of content, and knowing the cadence of each platform, and less on like, you're going to create a different personality for each platform. Because more often than not, you take a good piece of content and you distribute it. If it's good, it goes everywhere, and so even if it's something that might be better for a younger demo, if it did well on your Twitter page, then probably is going to do well on your Facebook page, right? Even if Facebook is an older demo. So I think it's really about content optimization. It's about understanding what's going to make your audience grow and engage on each platform, and looking at it from that lens. Like, yeah, sure, certainly there might be something that's a better Twitter play versus an Instagram play. And Twitter is the real-time platform, right? So you're not going to live, you live tweet a game. You're not going to like live Instagram feed post or whatever. Like, you could do Instagram stories. So there's different mechanisms, but I think it's really
like, would you almost like recommend that they have almost like a Finsta? Like, hey, this is the one that fans are going to see, and you post that kind of content there. And your other Instagram, this is the one where you can post like pictures of you hanging out with the grandkids or the nephews or whatever.
No, I don't really suggest, like, I think that I get it if people use it personally. Like, for me, right, if I was a talent and I like was on TV all the time and I had this huge voice, and I, as someone who uses Instagram personally, and I mean, use it personally and professionally, but it's like a social tool. Like, would I want my feed to just be flooded with all my TV hits?
Right.
No, probably wouldn't. Like if I'm talking about sports or politics or whatever it is, like I don't want people to look at my feed and be like, boom, boom, boom. Maybe there's a happy medium, but the answer is not to break it up. I think that, certainly you could argue that you have a more private account that people don't know about for your closest. And I'd be an advocate for that, but I don't think it's, if that's passionate to you, but like passionate for you, but it's, to program multiple accounts. Like if you're talking about programming them, no, I wouldn't. I really would say swallow your pride. Like you should go all in on one account and figure out the best way to make it work. But also more often than not, folks understand and they're like, cool, I'll go all in on this. And, the younger demo uses Instagram and will actually be looking at it every single day. Right. So they might have a better idea of how they want to use it. But for most people that I've dealt with, they're like, cool, like just tell me what I should do on Instagram. I have trust in you and what you guys are saying and, whatever is best. So, yeah, I mean, but everyone has their own strategy.
Yeah, I think like what you're getting is you want to. It's not just okay; it's encouraged to be a full person online and not just be the people you see on TV. Like it's fans are going to love you more when they can relate to you as whatever, a father, as a sports fan whose team just lost. Like there are things that you can do to to not to use a cliche term, but to humanize yourself, which ultimately makes those fans feel closer to you.
Agreed.
And I guess to piggyback on this point a little bit, we talk about authenticity all the time. That's a word that's thrown around quite a bit for a good reason, though. And like, how much of what someone is on television or wherever their hit is, streaming platforms, is like not hyperbole, but they are talent and they are playing a role. And there's a lot of themselves in that role, but there might be emphasizing it a little bit, or a charactering themselves a little bit, if that's even a word. Versus on social, like how much is it? Hey, this is a social account of you, the talent, versus and there's a little bit of you, the real person, or maybe not a little bit. There's a lot of you, the real person in it, but it's almost like I guess kayfabe just in some capacity for that WWE term. Like how much of that is them, again, social media embodying who the fans see them as versus who they are, more authentically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a strong believer that it should be a 1-to-1 correlation as closely as possible. I'm not as big of a believer on, like you should lean into stuff more and show a different side of you. Now, it's good to show personality in a way that people don't traditionally see you. But like, if you're really into, memes, or you're like, you have a really funny personality and like you're a natural with comedy, you should probably you be very active on TikTok and you could do very well. And you should lean into moments that are trending sounds and memes and all that stuff because it'll resonate. But like, if you're very stern and a serious person and that's your whole MO, then you shouldn't force it. And maybe TikTok, I mean, frankly, it's getting to the point where TikTok, there's a play for everybody. Mm-hmm. But if you just are like a very serious person and, you like staying in a certain role and you don't want to be spread too thin and you only want to have a few platforms, then like, do you. Like, I don't really like the whole character thing on, hey, this is online in the internet, you should behave in a different way. I think there's things that are more acceptable and you're able to express yourself in other ways than maybe you can online, can in person, or if you're on TV or you're in the public spotlight. You can definitely showcase things you wouldn't otherwise. But when it comes to personality, like, I think it should be as close to who you are as a person, because what I don't enjoy is for anyone, if I meet them in person and they're very different than what they were on social media, I think there's a huge disconnect. And alarming is like too strong of a word to use, but it's a letdown. Like when I follow you, like I see your messages and tweets or whatever. That should be you as much as it can. Like I should be able to meet you in person and not feel like I'm talking to someone different.
No, it totally makes sense. And I guess that's a good point too, to think about. Let's have the like tweets are my own conversation here around like,
yeah,
in a couple of ways. Like, one is how do you, whether you're working with people now with bknown or before with ESPN, of making sure that they are transcending the, wherever their employer, for lack of a better term, if they're, whether it's DAZN, ESPN, Fox Sports, or any other entertainment platform as well, of not wanting to necessarily be pigeonholed as to this person is an ESPN talent. That's their MO. That's their character, because that's not going to last forever in most cases, unless you're like a lifer like a Chris Berman or something. And so, like, how do you make sure when you are working with individual talent that they are not, that association is still there because it has a ton of value, but it's not a forever thing, so that you don't have whatever blank NFL or blank Fox Sports on your handle necessarily. And if you ever leave that entity, you're kind of SOL to some degree.
Yeah. So remind me, the question is, how do you make sure that they are staying authentic?
Yeah. Well, I guess is that a concern, or even on the top of your mind, of making sure that fans are engaging and falling in love with Brendan Kaminsky, the person, and that if Brendan Kaminsky ever leaves his employer, ESPN, that he's not, that his entire account isn't revolved around that persona, I guess, or identity.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it all comes down to content, right? Content is king. The more that you are putting out content that your fans like, the more that you'll build that connection with them and they'll be loyal to you, right? And really it comes down to like fan engagement, right? So that's why I always encourage, do Q&As, do lives, reply to fans, don't reply to negative comments with like something like negative, because that's not good. But I think that it all comes down to how you treat the audience. Like, if let's say you work at Fox Sports and all you do is post Fox Sports clips, that's not to say if you left Fox Sports, you couldn't still maintain that audience. It just depends on how you're communicating, how you're messaging. Are you putting out the content that they like? Like, if every clip you put out is a 5-minute video on Twitter, your fans will not retweet that as much as if it's a 30-second video or a minute-long video, just because the attention span on Twitter is much shorter. So the more that you're optimizing generally, the more you'll be able to reach your audience and the more that they'll appreciate your content. And then the more that you're just like directly engaging with them, like, you can build monster fans from that. So it really just, I think it's like a big picture principle where, people will follow you if they feel that you're being genuine, and it doesn't matter like what type of content it is necessarily, where like, if you're not bringing them that content when you leave a company, like, they won't come back to you. Like, they like Neo for Neo, and wherever he goes, they should continue, assuming you're loyal.
Great stuff with Brendan Kaminsky of bknown. And again, if you haven't noticed, this was before the podcast became a video podcast. So all of this is audio. Hope you are kicking back and listening and enjoying it back in the traditional podcast sense before we went to video. But great stuff with Brendan Kaminsky. Listen to episode 221 of the podcast to hear that full interview. You will enjoy, I guarantee it. Next up on the Best of Digital Social Media Sports podcast, I loved this chat so much. You're going to hear a bit of my conversation with Kayci Evans. She is with Evil Geniuses, the esports team. Prior to that, she spent years with Major League Baseball, really overseeing their live content creator, LCC program. And this was a tremendous chat, really understanding what it's like to talk about esports fandom and what it means to develop fandom, and how that differs and is similar to traditional sports and esports. And so this part of my chat with Kayci, you're going to hear about what it's like to develop esports fandom. She came in and was kind of an esports noob in some some ways, not a diehard esports fan. So she talks about learning what's like to learning the esports ropes herself and how she can take those lessons into developing more new fans and develop more casual fans as well for Evil Geniuses and for esports in general. We also touched on a little bit of her time with MLB and really going into the strategy of the LCC program and what it's like. Just so much good stuff in this chat. So here it is, some of my conversation with Kayci Evans of Evil Geniuses.
So it evolved every year, right? And I would say when I left the program this last year, after this last season, we were strategizing content capture based off of where we knew we'd have positions in either a well or up on a platform in the lower bowl. Mm-hmm. We would strategize, and I would work closely with like Lucas Stevenson and Jake Nesbitt, who oversee the team now, on, based off of what the team's needs are, what maybe a sponsorships, their needs are, mm-hmm. what our player marketing team's needs are, plus what MLB social needs. I think my last World Series, we had maybe 7, 8, 9 content creators just to knock out all those things. That's not inclusive of MLB photos and the other photographers and videographers from the teams or the wires that were also down there. So we were super thoughtful with how we were approaching this. And then on the backside of like, once you capture that great moment, knowing when it's a big enough moment to stop what you're doing, stop shooting, which is, a gamble because you might miss something, and go plug your card in and get something over, plug your phone into the camera while you're standing there at BP or whatever it might be. So we would go in with a content capture strategy to, reach all of all the deliverables we had from various teams. And then we would also have a distribution strategy based off of what those big moments and what we could anticipate, what those moments might be, and getting that over quickly so we could be the first to put it up online.
Yeah. And like, did you guys think about trying to anticipate what would help a team, I guess, with their marketing strategy? Like, hey, this guy's been the player, here's the rookie of the month or whatever. So let's make sure that we take care of this person. Yeah. Or, I guess you're having content capture every single day. So it's not necessarily like you're not reassessing strategy every single week or whatever. But like, are you thinking about like storylines that you're going to kind of, it's almost like, I think I use this analogy, like throw gas on the fire or like try to start a fire?
Yeah, totally. I would say a little bit of both. We worked super closely with the teams in terms of, let's say, I don't know, like Wander Franco's call up last year. Like, I'll just use this as an example. It was like, how can we get someone, I think he was in North Carolina at the time before the call up. And it's like, how can we get someone there to start capturing B-roll? Because we know we're going to want to do a commercial spot for this announcement tied to Make It Major or whatever our campaign was. So we had literally shipped, one of our East Coast LCCs to North Carolina to go capture all of that.
Wow.
While working in tandem with the Rays and figuring out when he's going to arrive and figuring out, what we can capture on his first arrival to the ballpark. And also, making sure that we had a videographer in the wells for his first game at the Trop so that we can get that first hit, that first home run, whatever it might be, when you're going to like have that moment from the fans and just the audience, like freaking out that they've witnessed history. Right. And then taking that and plugging it in to the ongoing content piece or commercial that we were working on for his call up, so that we had like the version pre-call up, kind of like teeing it up. And then you have like the new ending version that could be swapped out for broadcast with the moment that like just happened. On top of like also making sure Wander has all those assets, the Rays have all those individual assets, and like all these other things. It's crazy. Like when you think about the operation that they're manning over there, still it is wild.
Oh yeah, and you bring media partners into play too. The ESPN, Fox may want some of that people as well. And
they've all got it. It's crazy. I mean, it was insane the amount of just reach that that team's videos and photos has. It's pretty incredible. Super proud.
And I love seeing, and like certainly that program was a big part of this, as well as the player marketing program, of really that transition of MLB to focusing on its star players and like helping them lead the way. And I think about that from an esports perspective. Like take me through, like, I guess, what's the overall, well, before we even get into it, Kayci, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this. Give us a rundown of who Evil Geniuses is and or are, what teams you guys have, what the structure looks like, even Evil Geniuses in 1 minute or less or something like that.
Okay. So Evil Geniuses, I know, right? Yeah. And starts now. Evil Geniuses is North America's original esports team. So the brand Evil Geniuses has been around since the 90s, which a lot of people can't believe. I mean, they were playing Dota 2, Counter-Strike in the early 2000s. They really have a super deep history, but the twist is that it was all player run. So, and it was player run until 3 years ago when when Peak Six came in, invested, they put our CEO, Nicole Point Jameson, in charge. And so really, while it's an old brand or I shouldn't say old, but original brand that the esports community might be used to seeing, it is very much a new brand in terms of the more casual gamer audience or people like you and myself who would have not been as familiar with our crest and our brand until the last 3 years or even more recent. So the last 3 years has really been making it a full-blown organization. We are, what I would say sets us apart is we are super invested in how we can make gaming a space that is welcome to everyone. The esports and gaming community can be, like any community, super toxic and all that. But because I think these fans are so hardcore, and because of, if you watch a broadcast, you might just assume everyone in esports looks a certain way. We have really made it our mission to remove that barrier to entry, right? Like, what's going to get me or you interested in League of Legends if we've never played? What would make you pay attention to League of Legends right now? I don't know, right? So it's asking those questions, figuring that out, building our fan base, while also making sure that we are winning games, taking names, and kicking ass in the space. In terms of our titles, so we have 5 titles that we participate in, and a couple of them have the best amateur leagues, the best. It's literally like MILB basically, but for gaming.
Okay.
But our 5 main titles are Dota 2, Counter-Strike, Valorant, Rocket League, and League of Legends. And so we participate in tournaments year round. They play all over the world. My best analogy is it's like a college sports team because you have all these different sports. You have all these different sports under one brand umbrella. But what I will say that I don't think people realize about the chaos of gaming and esports is that these seasons, they don't have just one season a year or one long season and then a long off season. They play for 2 or 3 months, then they go to a playoffs, and then they go to the world stage, and then they stop for maybe a month, and then they start it all back up again. So you're playing multiple seasons to get to multiple World Series or NBA finals. Wow. In 1 year. And it's 5 different teams doing that constantly. So it is, when I say it's bananas, I mean, Gwen Stefani has nothing on esports. It is bananas. It's crazy. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to approach the rest of the year because it's bananas.
We'll definitely get into the preparation for multiple World Series later in our talk. And I want to talk about the fan development side as well. Before we can get there, though, I kind of want to hear what it was like for you to make that transition. And like you said, you're not a noob gamer or whatever the right terminology is, but take me through that of even the language part of it. Especially if you are on site at an event, if you are on social, if you use the wrong terminology and there's this almost this language, this dialect of gamers that you get called out as being whatever, a noob or being someone that doesn't know, doesn't belong here. So what was like for you to learn that culture of the gaming esports space in general, as well as Evil Geniuses, and how do you make that not something that can potentially turn off a casual fan and be I don't understand what anyone's saying. What the hell does this mean?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's still something I am learning. And I think I will be learning for the however long I'm in esports, which I think will be a long time. It's always changing. It is very much the language and the lingo it's so deeply rooted in I don't want to just call it internet culture, because it's not just internet culture. It's like chat culture on Twitch or Reddit culture, like in the weeds of Reddit, right? Like TLDR, like that probably started being said years ago on Reddit or in chats or whatever. And now we're just starting to see like casual people use that, right? In texting and stuff. So it's something that I'm still working on. I will say that everyone at EG has been so wonderful in like even our onboarding process. Like we were able to sit down and go through each game title, talk about some lingo and things that we need to know, like what's a minion in League of Legends, or what does KKW mean on Twitch chat? Like all of these things that, you know, when I see it, and I watch a Twitch chat, I just think that they're talking gibberish, but like they mean something, like they're saying something. It's wild. And it's been really fun. Even, you know, the touch grass meme, and if Taylor listens to this, she'll appreciate this, but I work with this amazing woman, Taylor, who oversees our EG Creator Collective talent. And my first week, she was explaining to me what a touch grass meme was. And essentially, you know, it's like if you've been playing too long and you're losing and whatever, it's like, dude, get outside, go touch some grass. Like you need some fresh air. And I thought it was incredible. And so she's like sending me memes and letting me get familiar and whatever. And so that, you know, ended up turning into this idea to bring touch grass to life at our League of Legends fan activation. So it's been really fun to learn and also just acknowledge that like I don't know everything that they're talking about, and like raising my hand in a meeting and being like, hold up, what did you just say? Like, what does that mean? Can you give me the backstory? And then having colleagues that are patient enough and willing enough to kind of fill me in has been a total game changer, because then I can take that and I can make sure that when we're marketing to our fans, we're doing it in an authentic way that makes sense to them. So I'm going to say it's an evolution. I'm still learning. I don't think I'll stop learning because there's just so much. But yeah, I don't know.
I think that shared culture and that shared like language certainly strengthens the community and makes it feel that much more powerful once you find yourself in that community. So does that benefit outweigh the cost of someone being like almost feeling like, do I belong here? Or it's like if I wander into whatever Spain and I try to speak some broken Spanish, like, is it more like, hey, look, at least he's trying, or is it more like, what the hell is it supposed to do? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, right. It's super intimidating, I think is the right word, at least how I felt, because you already don't know how to play the game, right? Or whatever they're talking about. And then on top of that, there's a lingo that is matched to that game style or that community. And so it makes it a challenge on the marketing side to figure out how you're going to break down the barrier to entry. If you can't even talk the same language as, you know, the brand that is trying to get you in, how are you ever supposed to become a fan of it? So I think, you know, it's really finding that balance of being authentic to the gaming culture so that our current fans like feel like we are, you know, staying real to what we do and who we are and the games and all that. But then also finding maybe the more understood or easy to understand language to get other people in. So like touch grass, I think probably is more of a general internet meme versus like a League of Legends meme or, you know, a Valorant meme or whatever. And so tapping into things like that, where you can kind of start to seed the language to our audience that we're trying to reach and get them in. I think we're going to have to keep doing things like that, because we can't just talk in, you know, super endemic was the word you were trying to think of, super endemic language to try and get non-endemic people interested.
When you guys are thinking about whether it's annual plans, quarterly plans, or season plans, whatever, are you do you almost have to put on both sides of that brain of being like, okay, we're going to do this to make sure we like cater to the fans, our hardcore fans that are here for the game. But here's what we're going to do to try to reach those casual fans or bring them in. Like, is it two distinct fan bases that you're trying to engage and reach, or do you really have to try to cross-pollinate as much as you can?
Yeah, I would say right now we're in the phase of cross-pollinating as much as we can. I'd love to get to a point where, you know, we can do we can host a marketing campaign, but that is super targeted to certain audiences and almost like multiplied, right? So we can have a version of it that's for our APAC audience, and we can have a version of it that's for the hardcore gamer and it's very stat heavy or whatever it might be. And then we can have a version that is for the casual gamer who just happens to like Animal Crossing and playing Switch. But maybe the tie in there is, maybe if they play on Switch, they also play Zelda. And if they like Zelda and the lore of Zelda and the world building, they might like the lore of League of Legends. Or, how do we get kind of to that point to find that answer or I guess like get them in? But I think for now we're at a point of where's the middle and how do we really go all in on that cross pollination and the middle line that either fandom or all of the fans we're trying to reach can participate and don't feel left out.
Yeah, and I really like the way you connected some dots there, which helped me a little bit. It's almost like, because you probably have that like, or that third type of fan who is a fan of Evil Geniuses and one of their titles, but hey, you already love Baylor softball. Have you checked out Baylor football? You may not be familiar with it yet, but it's fun. Or like, hey, you're already a fan of our League of Legends team. Have you checked out this title? Like, you might like. So, do you like? Are you almost simultaneously trying to build fans of the titles and the teams, as well as like, hey, you should love everything EG touches?
Yeah, totally. I would say right now, like a lot of our efforts are title specific. But like yesterday, I think it was yesterday. Sometime this week, Netflix dropped new profile icons that are for Arcane, which is a League of Legends origin story for some of their champions in the game. And so something like that, that's trying to talk to someone about Netflix, League of Legends in general, and then, champions of League of Legends. So that's like kind of three areas where we can casually tap into a conversation. So, we ended up posting something that's like, oh, which one are you going to be using as your profile pic, or which Arcane character are you going to be using for your profile pic at your next Netflix and chill session, right? And so that's a little bit more like you and I can totally chime in on that, if we want to, and are into at least Netflix, right? And at least League of Legends to some degree. So I think, again, it is all about connecting dots and trying to think about, putting yourself in those shoes, what would get you to each phase. I hate to use the fan funnel diagram that like everyone has seen in marketing, but it is real, right? It is like, how do you get people down the narrow funnel by hitting them with something a little bit more vague or that they can, I guess, connect with?
No, there's something really cool there about like identifying these common denominators. Like there's almost like this utopian view of like, we all have something in common. Like, yeah, you may not know this game yet, but we all know like good versus evil. We all know the heel in the face. We all know like the underdog that doesn't expect to win, but somehow wins, or the comeback.
I love
story. That. So it's
cool.
And that transcends sports and that transcends like even markets and industries or whatever.
Yeah. 100%. I like that.
Love that stuff. Kayci is really articulate, really thoughtful with her responses. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. You should check out the full interview on episode 223 of the podcast. She's still doing good stuff with Evil Geniuses today, so check her out and check out Evil Geniuses if you have not already. Next up on the Best of Digital Social Media Sports podcast, we are halfway through, and you're going to hear next from Andrew Stallings. Andrew, I've been following his career for ages. If you listen to the full episode, you'll hear kind of how long we've known each other, and it's been great to follow him and his emergence and of building Athelo Group and how they work with athletes, how they help develop brands, and you're going to hear also too on really how Andrew took a chance on himself. He started Athelo Group with a couple of other partners, and then he bought them out, and all of a sudden he had to make or break it, and it's a really cool way to kick off this part of the interview of the episode. That you're gonna hear from what it was like at that moment when he said, "I'm gonna take a chance on myself and I'm gonna do this," and all of a sudden it's like, you gotta do it. And so we talk about what it's like, developing athlete brands, especially in those emerging sports, those smaller names where they're not making millions off their contracts. They're not MLB or NBA or NFL players, and how you really develop a brand that is attractive to sponsors. How you can diversify your assets, so to speak, so you can find different ways to activate. So really good stuff. Here he is, Andrew Stallings of the Athelo Group.
I will never forget writing those checks and just being so upset, so pissed off. Like I was just angry at everybody. Like, to me, like there was a lot of self-induced pain and pressure that I put myself through to make this work. I was not confident it was going to work. And I think that was the hardest part, is that I, to this day, still believe that a lot of the success of this company was in large part due to my community, my connections, and I mean, they helped build it from a, operations and branding and stuff like that standpoint. But the meat and potatoes, like the overall, intestines, if you will, of this company, really came in a large part from me. And so when you have to write those checks, it sucks. So you're saying like, haha, high five, we're all still friends. But I sat there and I probably pounded 6 beers before that game. And I just played the game. I remember having a horrible game, spent most of it in the penalty box, threw up, on the bench. Like it just sucked. Like it literally is just like mentally, you're just going through it. You're going through these motions. You wake up the next morning and you're just like, it was the first real splash of accountability. It was like, okay, like you don't have to wake up at 9 o'clock, Andrew. Like you don't have to be in the office by 9 o'clock. Like it was the first real smack of accountability, as being somebody that was like, I had a severance package sitting in my bank account. Like I was fine, for the time being. I could have sat there and just applied for jobs on Indeed or LinkedIn. And there were times that I did, but a lot of it was just, kind of a really awe-inspiring, like next few weeks of like an exercise of true accountability. There is no one coming to save you. There is nobody coming to help you. It is 100% on you. And when you get through that fear of loneliness, it's actually really amazing. It's so, I don't know how to explain it. For anybody that started a business or anybody that's gone through just a radical transformation in their life, whether it's getting back to the gym or a diet or a breakup, you hit this moment where you realize, like, I don't want to say it's rock bottom, but it's like, there's no other way but up, right? So you go through this and you just, every single thing you do is not a negative. If you fall, it's a learning lesson. So every single day moving forward, I just looked at everything as like, this is learning. This is growth. Like, I'm going to really F up a lot of this stuff. And I did, and I still do. Like, I get people that, will hit me up and say, this is messed up on your website or that. And, of course I crack down on people who are overseeing that stuff, but, no one's perfect. And I think that's why so quickly in my career and to this day, I hate people that are always like, oh, what are you an expert in? Why are you focusing on just this? I hate that term. I hate experts. I think that we all should be challenging ourselves to maybe own and focus on one category and area, but we should always be evolving, like different facets and areas of learnings and teachings and opinions on what we learn and do, because you're not going to be able to accomplish anything, whether it's professionally or personally, if you're too stubborn or closed-minded to not, really see that or address that. So, that's really like that day, it always sticks in my head because I still see those guys. I still play hockey with them and they're still at their 9-to-5 jobs and, they're happily married. They have kids. Like, I don't hate them. They're good dudes. They're great guys, but you grow apart. You certainly grow apart in a lot of ways. And, it still kind of will always forever sting. And I don't know, maybe one day if it'll stop, maybe if it's something where people just don't see each other and grows apart, but those before anything else, those are your friends first, right? Like, and I think anytime you go into business, people always say, like, don't work with family or friends. There's a high risk. And, luckily the reward is paid off to date. But, I probably lost like 2 really, really great friendships to that. But who knows, whether it was this or something else, if those friendships were even going to be what they were at this point, years and years later. So, I always just try to remember and remind myself that it was never going to be bulletproof. It was never going to be perfect. Just the universe has a way of feeding us stuff and you have to just take it, run with it, and make it your own.
Totally. And I totally appreciate the idea of, being comfortable with being uncomfortable, almost embracing being uncomfortable, like using that as fuel and not as something that's going to keep you down or like make you uncertain every day. But I want to talk about the athletes that you work with, the quote unquote niches, to use your word, that you found. Like, what were these athletes doing before Athelo came along, where they just, taking some basic deals that, the endemic brands were giving them to use their equipment and call it a day. I think now we almost have normalized looking at college NIL, looking at all the, the creator economy out there, allowing individuals to do their own thing on TikTok, on Instagram. And we take for granted that these brands just are looking to work with individuals now. But when you were starting out and as you have grown Athelo over the years, what were the solutions like for those athletes early on? And what did you go to them and say, hey, you can aspire to do more. Here's what we can do.
Yeah, it's tough because I could probably talk for a whole podcast episode on this. It's probably one of the more frustrating things that we deal with, and it's a twofold topic, Neil. And the first thing is, how should an athlete, a creator, an influencer, or just an aspiring individual that wants to monetize their social media or personal brand, how do they manage it? What's the right way to manage it? What are the industry norms? What is the education behind it? And there is a massive, massive void in terms of what the value is and what the perceived value is across a lot of different verticals. You can ask what certain people at different followings, sports, variations, ages, races, sex, whatever do, but nothing and no two people are even remotely the same. I have seen athletes with almost identical social media followings, identical audiences, and identical engagement rates and assets, everything. And I've seen one brand offer them $15,000 for an activation and campaign. I've then seen them also offer like $1,000 to the other individual. And the perception is always how educated, how confident, and how willing are you to risk and walk away from any offer that's presented to you. And I think that's the hardest thing, right? Is that every single athlete that we work with, they are in the business of making money. And as much as I beat into a pulp that our relationships with our athletes are not money driven first, they are very much driven at the end of the day. They are a big driving factor to what we do because this is their livelihood in a lot of ways. So what we have to always remind them is that money up front is always going to be the hardest thing for you to that we ask them to dismiss. We look at every relationship with all of our clients and athletes as an investment to their personal brand, an investment to their education. And I've told every athlete that I've ever encountered, I said, my goal, albeit it hasn't happened to date, my goal is hopefully you learn enough, you gain enough, and you become knowledgeable enough by having seats at the table with us in meetings with these brands and these companies and different properties that in a year, 2 years, maybe you don't need us. Maybe you can do this on your own. Maybe you're just like, all I need is a lawyer to just double check my contracts, and that's it. The hard part is that even though you learn a lot, things are always changing, right? So it's like, even if you gain enough knowledge, into one area, there's always something new that comes along. So it's very, very different. But in terms of our athletes, many of them have either done it solo and have just grown tired of the game, the negotiations, the back and forth. They really don't want to engage every single minute on the hour with the brands, not because they just don't like to enjoy it, but the brands can ask for a lot. The agencies ask for a lot. I mean, a good example, I'm dealing with an agency right now, the turnaround times to get approvals and clients and contracts, like it's hours. Like they literally emailed us. They're like, is this athlete interested in this? Great. Let us know by 4 p.m. Eastern today. I look at the clock, it's 2:15. I'm like, in what world? I'm like, they're at training camp right now. Like, I don't know. I haven't even got a chance to review this brief. And it's really, really tough because the expectation is like, go, demand. Like, I'm paying you for a service. I want it. Athletes get tired of that. They need a buffer. They need somebody to defend them. And they can't be their parents or their uncle or cousin all the time. They really need somebody that's knowledgeable and that's willing to not just be a one-person army, but know when to pull a lot of different levers and bring them to different conversations in order to defend them. I always call us like it's somewhat magicians in a lot of ways, right? It's like you're going toe to toe in a Pokemon battle. Like, which Pokemon matchup based on who you're going against are you going to pull? Like, are you going to pull the Squirtle? Are you going to pull a Charizard? Like, who knows? Because no two conversations with people are the same. You're reading people, you're reading the trust, you're reading the humility of it. There's a lot of ethics that go into what we do. So, many of them they use us because they need that trust. They need somebody that's going to go there, find their best interest. Others look at us as like a creative resource. They're like, hey, I already have all these deals. I know I got great deals. I just need somebody to be constantly upselling, showing how I can bring more value, how this is growing, that's growing. If TikTok's not working, my email newsletter is. If my email newsletter isn't working, guess what? We're starting a subscription box service in the next 3 months. Like they just want us to be constantly in that person's ear to help build them. The last thing is that the athletes just, I've said they've gotten tired. They really just want to learn. They also want to have that protection. But at the end of the day, they really just want to sit there and not have to focus on this as much as they probably should. And that's probably the hardest part about what we do, is that even when we come in, some days it's Athelo group, handle everything. Just let me know, hit me up once a week, phone call, text me, okay, bye. And then out of nowhere, they will come back and be like, I want updates on the hour every day, this and that. So you're really managing a lot of versatile and volatile personalities on both ends of the spectrum, both of the athletes and the brands. You're the constant middleman. And, our team is always trying to just make sure that we help both sides understand that we're not here to be the sneaky, skeevy lawyers that are just, this is the number, this is the contract, here you go. We really are trying to lead with empathy. We're trying to lead with, I always call it the 4 E's. Like, it's evolution, it's enhancement, it's entertainment, and it's empathy. Like, we're always trying to kind of build and go off of those areas. But yeah, I mean, typically some athletes have either had no managers or agents, or they have, and they've been put on a roster, like been on the shelf for 45 other athletes, and they literally get their team deal done and that's it. And they just want more of a hands-on experience. So that's why what we do is a little bit different. The reason we don't have that many athletes too is, on top of that, we also have, retainers, built in all of our contracts. Like, we're offering PR services, digital strategy. Like, we're not just managers. Like, we really offer an abundant amount of services. And instead of doing just stuff where it's based off commissions on influencer deals and your team deal, we're really offering a brevity of services that, to date, a lot of our athletes they capitalize on and they go from there.
And I think too, like in the way you sort of talked about it, is you are investing in the athlete just as much as they're investing their time with you. And you look at I'm thinking about this dichotomy of, there's the professional development side where I want to be the best in my chosen sport, and if I'm the best, then the rest will take care of itself. And then there's the other side of, well, yeah, but if you want to upsell, if you want to maximize that, then there's the professional development side, which is your sport, and maybe the brand development side, the athlete as a brand, and you can win in both ways, and both ways are going to ultimately make you more valuable. And even if you're not the number one CrossFit athlete in the world, you can still make more money than the number one CrossFit athlete in the world if you have a stronger brand. So like, how do you ultimately work with athletes when it comes to that, of saying, yes, I want you to be spending all that time in the gym, on the practice field, or whatever. But if you work with us as well, like, we can do X, Y, and Z, and make sure that that next deal you get is going to be 10% more, 20% more. You'll get that many more offers. What's that split like, and how do athletes tend to gravitate toward that professional development side, that brand development side?
I think the one thing a lot of our athletes typically cater to when I'm pitching them or explaining them how we're different is the trust factor, right? Like, they want to know, like, how can I turn over my brand, my business? Why should I trust you? And I tell them that out of the gate, they shouldn't. And they really should join us for meetings with new brands, new properties, like, new projects. If for nothing else, they should build that trust and rapport with us, but they should also gauge and see how we work. But on top of that, to your point, that's where they maximize the value with the brand partners by showing up, right? You know, like if you have an athlete that shows up to the meeting and pops on the Zoom call for the first meeting, man, like if I'm a brand manager, like, yeah, it's great to talk to an agent or a manager, whatever. But if the athlete shows up too, I kind of think that's cool. Like, I'm like, man, like I respect the hell out of that. Like that gives me the opportunity to be able to build my own relationship with the athlete if I'm the brand. And that's what the brand wants. The athlete knows that subliminally they may or may not want it, but they need it. They need to make sure that they have that rapport, because without it, they are fully submissive to whatever their agent or manager says. And then what happens if your manager or agent drops you and you're not seeing email chains, if you're not on Zoom calls, or in vice versa? What if you fire your agent or your manager and you just don't know what happened behind? Like there's a lot of what ifs. So you get to that point where you build that trust and that cadence. But I tell all of our athletes, it's like one of my CrossFit athletes was with me for the last 5 days in San Francisco and in Sonoma. Like we sat down with her sponsors. She was with me at all day meetings, content shoots, like talking about 2023 planning. She was there. And you know what? She probably solidified her relationship with both of those brands for the next 5 years because of it. Like it was having her there, listening, engaged, not on her phone, but fully dialed in and understanding and asking questions that probably set herself like apart from any other athlete that they're going to work with in the next 5 years. That's the good stuff. Like that's the secret sauce, is that if you have a manager that wants to include you in those conversations where necessary, I will say not every meeting they should be in, like, but right place, right time, right players in the room, they should be there. They should learn. They should be able to understand the brand, the company, the morals, the people that they're working with and representing. Because if they are, social content, messaging, and really explaining to their own audience why they work with a brand is going to come second to none. It's not going to be just hashtag ad. It's going to be, let me tell you a story about a time that I went to San Francisco and sat down with the CEO of this company and what happened. Like people love that shit. And we don't see enough of it. Like it's too turn and burn. It's too quick. It's too transactional. And again, I'm not saying that there's an immediate solve to it, but when you can find those opportunities that work on both ends of the table for the long game, that's the good stuff.
Tremendous stuff with Andrew Stallings of the Athelo Group. I definitely recommend that full interview. That's episode 222. Went slightly out of order in this best of episode, but episode 222 to hear the full chat with Andrew Stallings. Next up on the Best of Digital Social Media Sports podcast, listen to some of my conversation with Kyle Benzion. Kyle is another one who I've been following his career for ages. He came up in the college ranks with Nebraska and former podcast guest Kelly Mosier. But Kyle has had such a good career since then, as well. Coming up with the Atlanta Falcons, spending several years there. At the time that we spoke, he was with the Orlando Magic. Now he is, doing some cool stuff in the digital and social space with Holiday Inn Club Vacations. He has so much good insight to offer, taking from his diverse skill set and his experiences. And this part of my conversation, you can hear about what it was like for him to really grow up in the space and understanding how to develop a strategy and to use analytics to back things up, and also what it's like to sort of get off the keys and go to a leadership role where you're no longer pushing send on all the posts that are going out, and understanding the big picture of how social fits within an organization, and some really good, awesome insights there. So here it is. Listen up to some of my conversation with Kyle Benzion.
It's all about trying to find that balance, right? And it all comes down to where are our consumers, wanting and getting our content and engaging with our content. Mm-hmm. Looking at the numbers to figure that out. Obviously we've seen a lot less on Snapchat over compared to the last couple of years, less growth on Snapchat and a lot more on Instagram and TikTok. At some point, a lot of brands had to say, okay, well, is it worth that person continuing to post on Snapchat, or should we move them over to Instagram stories and creating content for TikTok, et cetera? I mean, you only have so many hands at the end of the day, right? And that's one thing that I learned a lot from college athletics to pro. Like when I was at GW, and even I saw it at Nebraska, it's like when there's all these accounts and you have your hands in them all you're trying to do is keep them all afloat. You're not trying to make anything great. You're trying to make everything good, just to keep everybody happy and, do what you need to do on all these accounts. that's an advantage of pro sports. It's like you have a lot less, you have the Magic account or the Falcons accounts, or, you may have a couple other ancillary accounts that you may have a hand in or maybe be running. But like you have way less. Like at GW at one point, I was signed into 27 Twitter accounts at one time. Like, how am I supposed to make all of those great at the time? It just, you can't. So that's one thing for me. Again, it goes back to perspective. And so like, let's channel our efforts to make sure we're making the great channels where we can.
And is it kind of about understanding what your audience priorities are there, like as opposed to saying going the other way around and saying, hey, we are really good at motion graphics, or we're really good at video.
Oh yeah.
Let's create great video, and we'll try to reprioritize it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it all starts with the audience. Like, I don't care what we're good at. Like, I've seen, I'm not going to call out any brands or anything, but I've seen teams put out incredibly creative content that I look at and I'm like, damn, they worked on that for like days. And then I'll look at the engagement and it has like 13 retweets and like 4 comments just on like Twitter. And I'm like, they never ask themselves, why will our fans care? Like, why will our fans want to engage with this content? Like, that's where everything should start. Like, before, all the time people say, hey, I have an idea in a brainstorm. Like, hey, I have an idea. And instead of saying, hey, I have an idea, like what I'm going to say back to you is like, how do you know your idea is going to work? Right? Like the before you say I have an idea, based off of what I know that's going to work and the research I've done about our fan base, hey, I have an idea based off of that. I think all the time people jump straight to brainstorming. It's like, wait. Just because you have an idea doesn't mean it's going to work. Like, let's do our research to make sure we're brainstorming on the right things. So,
yeah. I mean, it's hard sometimes to think about it, but Picasso was not thinking in his head, oh, what does the audience want to see? Maybe he was though. It's not that way in social. Like, you're creating for an audience. You're not just creating for the sake of creating.
Exactly. So I think that's where a lot of brands sometimes go wrong, is they just, hey, having a creative idea instead of asking themselves, like, do their consumers actually care?
And how's it start to come into play too when you are thinking of, because I think now we have come to accept that brand is all very, very intertwined with social, that you a lot of times your personality, your voice, what your brand stands for plays out on social for a large percentage of your fan base, and to a lesser extent your partners as well. And so when you're thinking about those less measurable things, like, is this messaging getting across? Like, is this voice recognizable now? Like, how do you go about thinking about that? And also then working with the people that are pushing buttons to make sure that they know how to think on the fly, but think on the fly in the way that you guys have defined.
Yeah, I think it's a healthy balance. Like, you want to represent your brand well, of course, but you do want to stand out, because we're living right in the scroll happy world where everybody's just scrolling, and you got to ask the question of like what we're saying on social, the content that we're trying to put out, like, why is someone going to stop and look at this and give it more than 1 second of attention and then scroll right by it? So I think it's a battle for attention. That's what social media is right now. It's a battle for attention. And so, like, what can we do to be different, stand out, and not be cookie cutter? Like, if you know what the Orlando Magic or the Atlanta Falcons or any other brand, if you know what to expect from them consistently, like in today's world, like, that's not going to do it, because like then people are going to scroll right past you because they know what to expect from you. You got to catch people off, be like, whoa, that's cool. What's that? Like, get their attention. Otherwise, in this scroll happy world, you're going to get about 1 second, if that, of someone's attention, and they'll just keep on going.
But how do we make sure that, like, I'm not going to say a blanket statement like all attention is good attention, but in some ways, like, how do you make sure that the path to get that attention is the right path for the organization up to the highest levels?
Yeah, I mean, every organization is very different. I've seen that easily. It's like every organization is very different as far as comfortability on those things.
Yeah. And
every organization is different with like leadership, even up to like CEOs or CCOs or whoever having a hand in it. So you have to, it's so independent. It's so different organization to organization of like what leadership is comfortable with. And I think it's going to change a lot as this younger, like you're my generation, become people in the C-suite who understand like social and digital a little bit more and understand that it is entertainment. It is official team news or brand news, but it also is entertainment. It has to act as entertainment.
Totally.
I think you're going to see it change. That line's going to change a lot. Not that brand should be like disrespectful or belligerent or anything like that, but just understanding that it's bigger than just like team statements and old school ways of thinking about news. It's like this has to be conveyed as entertainment. So I think it's a tough question because every organization is so different, but I do think like as the younger generation moves into that C-suite, like I think you're going to see changes here in the next few years or several years in the sense of freedom and expression and honestly just moving digital from a news-based view to entertainment.
Totally. What was it like for you getting away from pressing send and now seeing your coworkers do it, seeing your direct reports do it, and then to that level too of kind of going back to what we were talking about before, how granular can or should your feedback get? Like, are you doing like post-game mortems when you're like, hey, when you shouldn't have tweeted this, or I would have done this instead? Like, how detailed can you? So what was it like stepping away to begin with, and how do you make sure that you're keeping them on the ball moving forward?
It was extremely difficult, first of all. It just becomes so part of your habit. And I don't think we have enough appreciation for like social media managers and stuff because they're doing all this stuff. You know, they're sitting in all these meetings and they're brainstorming and they're maybe touching paid social and they're doing all these different things. But I think a lot of people forget, like, they're also like scheduling or hitting send on everything else that you're like not thinking about. So it you know, I was just used to like go boom, 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 like hitting send, going in the meeting, scheduling. And just to be a social media manager and have any sort of like work-life balance, you have to become like efficient and almost like a machine. And so it is really tough. Suddenly when you're not doing that anymore, it's like almost like, wait, what do I do with my hands? Like, what am I supposed to do? It's a step back. You have to like take a step back and kind of view things differently from a much bigger picture. Really a difficult adjustment. My switching into this role, like initially, that took time for me to get used to. As far as being like overly critical and stuff, like I'm not that. I'm not overly critical or even like hybrid or this is how we should have done it. For me, like I have a perspective of just because it's not the way I would have done it doesn't mean it's the wrong way. Yeah. And that's okay. I talk with our social media manager a lot about like, hey, what could we have done to tweak this? Or let's look at these numbers. What could we maybe do differently next time? That's not me saying I would have done it this way. It's, again, I like to base things off numbers. Like, hey, based off maybe, there's always going to be some stuff that maybe doesn't work. So what are the small tweaks we can do? At the same time, there's things that our team does with the Magic that like I never would have thought about doing. Yeah. And so like that's great. So yeah, but that transition, man, it's tough. It's tough. Like when you're not in the NFL, there's transactions like multiple times a week. And you got to pull over on the side of the road and get the transactions out. Like the NBA doesn't have transactions or anything like that, which is really nice. But yeah, that was a big adjustment. And, it's something that I don't even know 9 months into this job that I'm still like for sure over, So it's a good question.
You can wake up in the morning and not like have to like furiously check check the mentions or check the comments or whatever. Like it's nice in some ways.
It is. It's kind of a breath of fresh air. It's kind of like, wow, I've been doing that for several years. Like it's good to get away a little bit from it.
To take me a little inside the like goals and objectives. And, we talk about, we can cite any number of KPIs and metrics, but it's like both from working at different organizations now, but also just going from 8 home games or 8+ home games versus to 41+ home games. And you're trying to sell tickets, and your ticket sales are a little bit harder to come by when you have that many more games to sell. So what's that process like of just divvying out content as well as how you're ultimately like what goals you're working towards?
Yeah. So from the content side of things, like, I mean, I've always been a huge advocate for like CrowdTangle, Sprout, things that you can do with and to compare to other brands, other teams. And we lived in CrowdTangle in Atlanta comparing ourselves to other teams. With the Magic, I definitely compare to other teams, but I honestly, with where we're at right now, I just want to see like progress year over year versus ourselves. I want to see like with where our team is on the court and where like what we're trying to do on digital. Like I just want to see year over year progress for us on social. But you had a really good point there from games. I mean, in the NFL, you got 16, 17 games, like 8, 9 home games, and then you have 41 home games in the NBA. That was a big adjustment for me too, honestly, because in Atlanta, the Falcons have a PSL system. So they
turn the lights on, you have a sellout almost.
Yeah, I mean, you have to sell tickets all the time, like in the off season, you're trying to get people to buy PSLs. There was so much pressure
Wow.
there for digital to drive PSLs, like completely, like a ton of pressure. Whether it was right or wrong, I'll let you be the judge. But there was so much pressure that digital and social was going to translate into PSLs.
Yeah.
Orlando. So I kind of expected like similar things like that in Orlando. It's not. We have a huge international following, huge, because, let's start big, right? NBA is a global game. Orlando is a huge tourism city. I mean, we have Brazilian accounts that are in Portuguese for Instagram and Twitter that we have an agency run, and they do a great job. So for us, it's like way less about, we look like season tickets are huge and all that. I'm not discrediting that, but like single game tickets are a huge opportunity for us. Because you want when people come to Orlando and they're saying, hey, I'm going to go to Disney, I'm going to go to Epcot and Animal Kingdom. And then they go up to their concierge and say, hey, what should we do tomorrow night? The concierge needs to say, oh, well, there's a Magic game. You need to go to this Magic game. Yeah. Like, it's such a cool experience. That's part of the Orlando experience. So that's been a really cool adjustment to see. We have tons of group sales for Magic games, for individual tickets, individual games. And that's been a really cool adjustment for me to see like two completely different ticket like outlooks and ticket strategies. So that's been kind of a cool learning experience for me.
I want to touch on both of those scenarios. First one on the Falcon side, how good can we get? How much better can we get at finding out where social, how much it does, if it does, attribute to those kinds of leads? And I don't think like no one's going to. I mean, I guess I don't want to say no one, but very few people are going to click on an Instagram ad and commit 5 figures of money on the spot from that, and that's going to be the last click, last touch attribution. Yeah. So, like, barring that rare circumstance when someone does like buy a car from their phone, how can you, or how could you, how did you guys try to show that we're part of the pathway to get there, even if we're not the last stop?
100. I think you just hit it on the head. I mean, like Dan Gadd is like the godfather of that, doing exactly what you just said. He's really good at finding different ways to lure people into to be a part of the process, even if it's the start of the process. You want engaging content or sweepstakes or emotional videos that they're going to get people to feel in that moment, like, oh, I care about the Falcons. I want to be with the Falcons. I want to be there. And then all you got to do is give us your name and email. And that was like our job, to get those leads. To your point, digital wasn't necessarily driving all the ticket sales. We were driving leads, and we were trying to drive the right leads to get those sales. So there was a lot of attention on digital for getting those type of leads. It's all about being part of that process, right? Like, to your point, people aren't going to buy it, aren't going to click buy, but you just want to get it in the hands of the people that in the organization that can get them to click buy.
Yeah, we can have a like multiple hours talking about this, because this is like, I can geek out on this stuff all the time. But like, you think about it from, there's top of funnel versus middle of funnel versus bottom of the funnel when they convert to whatever that conversion is. And you also think about social. I think organic social, what we hear often is organic social is about making people that like you love you. And it's not necessarily about, yes, you're going to reach some casual fans when something goes viral, but they're not going to become super fans just right there. Like, your path to convert those, where advertiser people is happening on the paid side. That's where the CTAs are happening. And so I think we have a long way to go to really have everyone start to understand that. But yeah, it's an interesting area to think about for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting to see different teams' paid strategies too. Like some teams put money behind some of their worst content to reach certain KPIs for partners. And in my mind, I'm just like, what are y'all doing? Because you're getting your worst content in front of more eyeballs. And that's how you want to be viewed as an organization, and like the type of content that you guys are creating. Like I've always viewed it and kind of learned from Dan, like you want the best content to get more eyeballs. Like, you want
gasoline on the fire. The fire should already be burning, and throw gas on it.
Exactly. So like I struggle when I see teams boosting and putting paid behind their worst content just to reach certain benchmarks for partners. It's like, that's how people are going to learn and learn about your brand. So
love being able to chat with Kyle Benzion, to be able to keep in touch with him too as he continues to develop his career, continues to really offer some great insight. So I definitely recommend that full interview. You will enjoy it. That's episode 224 of the podcast with Kyle. We have reached the last segment of our Best of Digital Social Media Sports podcast, and it's a good one to end on. I really loved my friendship with him and being able to learn from him. You're going to hear from Chris Wescott. At the time that we spoke, he was with the New Jersey Devils. Now he's with Learfield, the major college athletics player, and helping with their social and brand activation. And in this part of my chat with Chris, you're going to hear about what it was like to really help the Devils reform their voice and develop a new brand. Something that I brought up because I noticed when he was there with the New Jersey Devils, they really developed this new, engaging, dynamic voice and personality, and it played out across their channels and so here as well, and they're really beyond social, beyond digital as well. So it's really good to get that insight about how that came together and how you think about developing emotional connections between the fan and the team, and these lessons that I'm sure Chris still uses today in his role with Learfield. So listen up, this is a really cool segment of my conversation with Chris Wescott.
I think it's all dependent on the club that you work for. I mean, there are some that are very lock and key, very prestigious, and we don't do anything to harm the brand and the shield. And this is who we are. And our players are on lockdown. They're 100% focused on winning hockey games or football games or whatever it may be. And then you're going to have some teams that are like, look, we got to punch above our weight class a bit. We've got to be a little bit different. We've got to be innovative. We've got to push the envelope. And I think it's all about, you need to have a vision and a North Star, and for your brand specifically. And then you kind of build your content plan around that, and you kind of build your marketing around that. And you kind of build your voice around that. And I think that it's just different for every club, and there's different levels of buy-in. You're going to work for young digital professionals that are listening to me now, you're going to work for some organizations where you put something out there and you're really proud of it, and you're going to get a message from PR, or you're going to get a message from somebody that's like, hey, that's not in line with what we're trying to do. You're going to have moments where they're pushing the envelope and they're challenging you to be a little bit more innovative and do stuff differently. It's all dependent on where you're working, what the structure is, and what the North Star is. And even if your organization has a North Star and a brand voice or a brand identity, because some organizations don't. And then it's on you as a digital media professional to really try and find out what that is, and work with the right people to make sure that you've created something that now is kind of a handbook for how you approach digital content and social media and all that. So I really do think it's different across the board. I've worked with PR departments in my career that are very lock and key, very, we don't do that, very, straight lace. And I've worked with PR departments that are like, what do you got next for me? Like, what's next, and telling us things before they happen, and really kind of getting into it, or texting you late at night, hey, I love that post, or hey, I love that story. So I think it's just different. And there is no blueprint, for every single organization, because it starts at the top with the executive teams and how willing they are to have talented individuals kind of weigh in on certain decisions, or if they've already made a brand document and a North Star that you're going to follow when you get there. So I think it's just completely different depending on clubs.
No, it's really well stated, and I think that's something that anyone can take away when they're looking at, oh, this club did this or this club did that, and this club's so much better than this club, and you just don't know what the internal structure looks like. Who's pushing back, who's not. There's so many variables that I think we remind ourselves all the time, but people still forget it.
Some of your colleagues' best ideas probably never saw the light of day.
Totally.
And so for anyone in digital media to judge other presences, it doesn't make any sense, because you don't know what's going on inside that building. You don't know what the approval process is. Like, you could have like a killer launch video or announce video or something, and you have it, but you're waiting on the approvals, and then the moment comes and it passes and you can't use it anymore just because it didn't get approved in time. So like, you don't know what's happening inside those organizations. Every organization is different. And so yeah, I completely agree with that. You don't know what's going on.
I want to double click on that North Star really quickly, because that's a great way to frame this discussion. And you've been on some clubs over your career where there has been turnover, where there's been new head coaches or new GMs, and thinking specifically around hockey ops. And when you find that North Star, when you find that personality or who that brand wants to be, how much of it is also a North Star for hockey ops? And then when that changes, how much is it like, hey, this is who we are, versus a whatever, I'm going to throw a very divisive name like a Lou Lamoriello saying, nope, that's not how we talk anymore, guys. So tell me about that relationship and that, especially as turnover occurs.
Yeah, I think it depends on who's spearheading it with the club, right? Like if it's like the ownership has a certain North Star, or they've challenged their CEO to set the tone, it's going to be a little bit different, and that tone is probably going to survive past GMs or hockey ops or whoever it may be coming in and wanting to change things a little bit. I just want to go back to your point there. Is like, yeah, like there's going to be turnover and stuff, but the challenge is for the creative types and the people that have come up with the North Star, or the people that abide by it, to find ways to convince people that this is the right path. And honestly, like, if you have a good North Star and it's working, then turnover shouldn't matter, because that's the brand identity, right? So that's what the shield represents. That's the tone, that's the voice. It survives past different regimes, changes, and stuff like that. So, and also the whole point of having like a brand identity and voice is so that you can survive turnover at the creative level too. Because let's say I have a very talented social media person, and they go get another job and they become director of social media somewhere. Congratulations to you. I'm happy that you've evolved. The social media presence shouldn't change.
Totally.
Because it's not Joe. It's not his voice. It's the Devils. It's the Oilers. It's the Stars. It's not their voice. They may leave their fingerprints on it in terms of creativity and ideas and innovation, but the brand voice, the brand identity, the North Star, the content that you're producing should be able to survive through regime changes and staffing changes and turnover. So that's just something that I hold true. And I think that's very important, because if not, you notice the social changes from year to year. And a lot of that's because of, these companies, they maybe hire someone fresh out of college to run social media because they haven't evolved with the times, right, to know that you have to invest in those types of positions. So that's where you're going to get a little helter-skelter in terms of brand voice. And then you're going to see things that don't necessarily make sense coming from that team, if that makes sense.
No, totally. And I mean, you see it all the time, and it's a great insight. And tell me about how, like, you work really much in the trenches now of strategy, of what our content plan is going to look like. And you've gotten some good experience over the years of being on teams with undulating storylines or performances and expectations. And so tell me, especially whether it's with the Oilers, the Blackhawks, or the Devils, how much of it does need to pivot or need to change based on performance, or based on at least how much performance deviates from expectations? Like, hey, we expect to be a playoff team, now we're a seller. Or, hey, we're going to market the heck out of Taylor Hall, but oops, no, not anymore. Like, how much does that content strategy, like, all of a sudden there's a pivot point where, like, hey guys, we need to rethink this?
Yeah, I think there's always internal dialogue and cooperation with multiple departments across the board and how you're messaging certain things. I think that your content plan, the core of it, kind of stays the same. There are certain things that you're very repetitive with. There's certain, areas of your content plan that have a little bit more flexibility to be tailored to certain types of storylines and what things you want to push the brakes on and what things you want to push forward with. That being said, like, you try and have your core and you try and work that core. You try and make your plan and work the plan. And then the flexibility comes in where, if something really good happens, you are mobile enough and talented enough in your content team to jump on that and amplify that as a bigger moment.
Yeah.
You can weather the peaks and valleys of engagement because you have a baseline of traffic that you've built up through, good team coverage or good personality content or great social voice, whatever it may be. So you're able to kind of weather those valleys when the team's not performing very well. I mean, we've been very proud on the Devils side. Over the last 3 years, we've evolved from 12th in aggregate public engagement rate to 11th last year and then 7th this last season. So we've gone up despite the team having flat performance. And I think a big reason for that, on top of brand voice that our fans really enjoy and engage with, is that we've been steady with our content plan. We always provide hockey coverage every single practice, every single pregame, every single postgame. You could find every single interview that you could possibly want. We're constantly telling stories, feature stories. So fans, they know we are going to promote the positive stories heavier than we do the negative stories, but we do provide a base of down the middle coverage as the core of our content plan. And when you add that to fun social media content and brand voice, you have the recipe for a team that can weather flat performance on the ice. I don't know if that answers your question. I kind of went on a tangent there, but that's what I was trying to get at.
Oh, that's good. It leads me to think a little follow-up here of, because that one of those last points you made about that objective coverage of hey, if we're not playing well, we're not going to pretend like it's not happening. And I see some teams that still are very much hey, we're going to try to look at from as much rose-colored glasses as we can, whereas others will might have even parts of their team that actively criticize what's going on and talk badly about the team. So how important is that to establish some sort of I guess neutrality or objectivity, I guess, is more important to say it, and in establishing trust with your fans where they want to go to you for content first, so they know they're going to get it straight versus going to a beat writer where that might be more objective.
Yeah, I think that the first thing you need to do is be honest and understand that fans, they're smart. They know when you're trying to cover up bad performances or when you're trying the illusion of look over here while you're pulling a card over here. And I think that for content teams that lean into hockey editorial or team coverage, you have to provide a baseline of neutrality, objectivity, as you said, where you have, we run every single interview raw, start to finish. There's nothing hidden in those. Fans can get all the quotes that they want. Media can get all the quotes from them. And that's a big base of our coverage. And then from there, our game previews and recaps are straight line down the middle. There's not really anything that's over the top positive or over the top negative there. You're giving them the bare bones of facts and information and allowing them to create their own storylines. I think where it differs when you're a club is you have to be poised to capture the big moments that are positive for your brand in a different way than you would capture the big negative moments. And so for us, if, we call up a young player, so the Devils, perfect example, the Devils are a young team, one of the youngest teams in the league. And that can actually be a positive. The wins haven't come over the last couple of years, but these young players are getting a lot of experience. So we celebrate those as big hockey moments with, big feature story, a sit down interview with a guy who's getting his first call up or scores his first NHL goal. And I think that's where it's really important to now dial up that style of content. But I think you should always present that neutral case as well. I think that's how you build up your base traffic, because they know they're going to get that every time, even a loss. I'm going to get that. That's going to be available to me. I think that's super important.
Yeah, and that fan connection is not going to be as strong if they don't trust you, and that's right. That's a big part of it, I think. And you touched on something there too. I know that you and I talked about this a little bit before we started recording. Is that mix of hockey X's and O's or hockey content versus pure entertainment or more personality-driven content or more I guess feature stories, for lack of a better term. How have you seen that pie evolve in your career? And is it going to keep on shrinking? And there might always be some part of it that's hey, here's what here's the new line rushes, here's our new PK. How have you seen that evolve, and is there a stopping point? and is part of it more valuable because it's pulling in more casual fans?
Yeah, I think winning is the greatest shot of adrenaline to traffic and engagement.
That's marketing
and
strategy.
Yeah. And I think like having that base of hockey coverage, sports coverage is important in that when the team is good, they're going to start coming to you for that. The casual hockey fans that are looking for a new team or that become interested in you because you're winning are now going to latch onto that. I think that the personality content has gotten so much more important over the last few years in terms of marketing the star players, marketing the individual personalities on your team, showing off that the team is endearing in some ways. And I think that the pie, I think, has shrunk a little bit. But for a perfect example is, our social coordinator came to me a few seasons ago and was like, why are we still live tweeting games, for example?
Mm-hmm.
And we had like a pretty significant discussion. We have, a couple of in-house reporters, Amanda Stein being one of them. And, she live tweets games and we oftentimes retweet her a lot. So like, why are we tweeting almost the exact same content as her? Why don't we focus on celebrating the hockey moments of the game, fulfilling sponsor obligations, whatever it may be? Yeah. And the live tweeting is going to be from her. It's going to be from fan accounts. It's going to be from blogs. It's going to be from our local beat reporters. It's going to be from Sportsnet. It's all of that is kind of coming from other accounts. So what can we provide that's different? So whether that's being in the tunnel while the players are coming out for a different angle, whether that's being on the bench for warm-ups or doing something unique with POV glasses during a game, or having a different angle of a goal celebration, or different types of highlights that you're taking from the broadcast, we can provide something a little bit different that you're not seeing on all these other accounts. So that's where like you evolve kind of your strategy a little bit, because you have those conversations where before it was just a given. We're live tweeting the game. We're the team. We're going to live tweet the game. So I think that it's evolved from that, where it's like facts, news, get the stuff out, to now, okay, let's give the fans a little bit something different on our feeds. So that's like an example of what you're trying to think, talk about when you talk about the pie shrinking and changing and evolving. I think it's completely changed.
And there's something in there too about, as you alluded to, like differentiating what they're already getting from all these other sources. And even to your point earlier of like, we may not break the news. We're like, Elliot Friedman's going to break the news or whoever, but we can do something more with it. We can have a more robust content plan. We can tell you the behind the scenes of it. We can have a sit down with this guy or whatever it might be. And like, there's something to that. And I had this revelation early on in my career, like, hey, no matter what we do, we're not going to beat the scoops because we got to wait till it goes official. And so what can we give fans that they're not getting elsewhere? And I think that's an interesting way to think about it. Of let's give them a reason to follow us because we're giving them something they can't get anywhere else.
It makes them endear themselves to you a little bit more. Creates brand loyalty, brand affinity, because they know that they're coming to you for something that they're not getting elsewhere. So while the hockey coverage is super important and it has been for a long time, and it provides base coverage, and then when the team is good, you'll take off, I think it's super important that you provide a service that's different than what they're getting from all the other accounts out there.
Yeah. And it helps them love the team, win or lose, regardless of record, as well throughout. Chris, a few more minutes left here with Chris Wescott. He is the senior manager of content strategy for the New Jersey Devils. I want to talk. This part of what I was so excited to talk to you about today is I've been following the Devils for a long time, but particularly over the last few years, I've tangibly noticed a shift in tone and personality, and it's really taken off. And it looks like the team's almost, I don't want to say doubled down, but it's really just strengthened it even more, and the fans really love it. So tell me, take me back to what that conversation was like early on of saying, hey, this is who we're going to be now, and what it was like experimenting with it and then saying, hey, this is working. So take me through that whole discussion of the philosophy, and as well as the, actually how it actually plays out day to day.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and we do almost everything by committee approach. Like our social media team does not operate in a bubble. We operate alongside marketing, brand, strategy. Everything comes together for these moments. And for us, it was super important where we kind of took a step back. We realized that maybe we were under-resourced in a few areas. Maybe we were over-resourced in other areas. And we were kind of scrambling, and we were just trying to like put out social media content. And we all kind of came together and we're like, we need more of a North Star. We need guiding principles of our brand and what we are. And, that came right from the top of marketing and came from brand and social. And we all kind of sat in a room and started talking about, okay, what are the Devils? Who are the Devils? Who are we going to be 5 years from now? Who are we going to be 10 years from now? And, there were a lot of meetings and discussions that went on with this evolution of our brand and how the voice should not only complement who the brand is, but really work in tandem with it to grow brand affinity. So, we determined that we're the only pro sports team in New Jersey that claims New Jersey as its own. You have a lot of New York teams that claim New Jersey. You have some teams like the Red Bulls that do both, but New York's in their name. So for us, we wanted to lean into that. We are Jersey's team, and there's a certain pride and toughness that comes with New Jersey. And I've learned that over, 4 years here, and I love living in New Jersey. I think it's awesome. And I think it's right up my alley. And I think we wanted to reflect that pride, that toughness, that roll off your shoulders kind of mentality in our voice. And there's kind of an attitude and a bit of a swagger with it. And it's not necessarily that we're Wendy's, where we're roasting people every single day, but we're waiting for it. Like, if you come at us, like, we'll swing back. We're not going to take it from anybody. We're going to dish it back. And I think that plus a little bit of irreverent humor really kind of blends together with that attitude and toughness to create who the Devils are on social media. So, like, we don't always have to roast fans and trolls, but we got our fans are asking for it. They're tagging people and they're tagging us and stuff. And, we don't always have to do it, but, like, we're literally the Devils. So if we want to take a shot, we can. And, like, it's okay. And if you don't like us, we don't like you either. And there's a kind of this real authenticness to that voice when it's coming from the Devils brand. It just seems right, black and red and Devils and New Jersey. And so there's like this charismatic wittiness to it that is very endearing to the people of New Jersey. And we've seen just the engagement rate, the ranking in the NHL, the follower growth on certain platforms that we've identified as our growth platforms, especially like Instagram, where our brand voice really shines a bit, has been just so great the last couple of years. And a lot of that, I think, is because we have our North Star and we're using it on a day-to-day basis. And it allows us to amplify big hockey moments in a different way. I mean, perfect example is drafting Luke Hughes. We were able to get onto SportsCenter because of, the Step Brothers meme that we did and a few other posts that we had, because it was just perfect for what the Devils are, what that moment was, bringing someone else into the Jersey family. So, I think, like, it's a lot of people, a lot of work, a lot of debate, a lot of ideas. But now that we have that North Star, we know what we're building towards and what our brand voice should sound like, which is fun.
Yeah. And I mean, it's great to hear the numbers, stories as well, back it up, especially over the years. In the earlier time when you're just kind of dipping your toe into something new or a different tone or a different way to post on social, how do you know what's working then? Like, are you just paying attention to the replies, to the comments, and not everyone's going to love everything, of course. Like, you're going to have fans who hate it, you're going to have fans who love it. So, like, how do you know when you're trying something new, dipping your toe in, that this is resonating? Let's keep going.
I mean, I think, like, a lot of it is first identifying if that is within our brand voice and kind of the direction that we want to go. We're not going to try something new if it's completely in stark contrast to what we're trying to get across with that. And so it may not hit right away or resonate right away, but if it's building up to that brand voice, then it's a positive, right? It's because it's adding to the mix of what we're trying to do that amplifies that voice. And maybe it doesn't work today, but it's laid the groundwork that maybe it'll work some other time. So I think fear of failure is a thing that plagues a lot of people. It doesn't with us. We're okay with if something didn't perform as well as we thought it would, because as long as we know that we're building towards, it's part of that brand voice, that identity, then we know that it's a success, that we've found something that's fit into that. That being said, like, it's always great when you get like, I wish this other team was as, open as this, or right. I love this. I'd love to see someone else do this, or, like, blah, blah. I think, like, that's kind of when you start to see those comments, the people on our ground, our coordinators and our managers, like, they're kind of looking at that as a success story. And we measure, like, engagement rate per impression as one of our success stories as well for certain posts. So, like, maybe it didn't reach as many people as we wish it did, but the people that saw it really liked it and really engaged with it. I think like that's where we start to formulate wins. So maybe it's like, wow, that only got like 150,000 impressions, but the engagement rate per impression on that was like 13% or something like that. Wow, that's really high. That's a good post for us. So I think that's kind of how you measure it with the hard stats, but you also measure it with the fact that you're trying to build something and you're trying to ladder up to what your brand identity is. So that's a win for us.
Fantastic stuff with Chris Wescott. Again, at the time we spoke, who's with the New Jersey Devils. Now he is with Learfield. You can find more about him on LinkedIn and check out the full episode of the podcast. It's episode 226. And what a great way to end this Best of Digital Social Media Sports podcast. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season, depending on when you're listening to this. Maybe listening to it way down the line. But as you probably can tell, we have a very rich archive, and most of these conversations are very timeless, with great insights and great guiding principles, and so much good examples and insights and anecdotes that you can learn from. And really appreciate all the guests who have come on the podcast over the years, and of course the 6 that we featured today on this Best of episode. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. We will come back at you soon with a new episode. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz. You can find me again on Twitter, NJ287, on LinkedIn. You can look up Neil Horowitz on dsmsports.net, where you can find the full archive, including all these episodes that we have linked up with the show notes for this episode as well. And of course, the podcast, you can subscribe to it on your preferred podcast platform. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.